So, as we talk today, some days back, there has been a data breach of the popular messaging app called Telegram. Telegram emerged some years back as a good alternative to the most popular platform, that is WhatsApp. Uh, but around a month back, there was a large data breach of Telegram. And 2 days back, uh, a huge data set of 42 million users has been posted online. Now, I don't know of a platform which has not been breached. And this creates many questions because if you look at China, then WeChat is not only a communication platform, it's also used for all kinds of payment, transportation. So slowly, I think we are going to see an aggregation in the app ecosystem where, let's say WhatsApp today is wanting to add payment APIs. Now, Khushbu, we are in a situation where the use of apps is not optional today, that almost everybody has to use these apps. But this has created a situation where there is a great utility. Everybody is on these apps, but what about my rights? Are they protected? And what is my security? Because tomorrow, if any data is breached, it's only a contractual liability to a company which probably is in US or China or wherever. So I think that the rights of individual versus the rights of these apps company, they're very lopsided. We can begin with this. I would like to know your views, and then we can go back and forth. Yeah, Kushbu.
Absolutely true. And when we see this, that's because maybe there's a huge gap when it comes to what exactly these mobile apps have to have it. Security measures they need to have it, and how to implement that. If you look at privacy, how it originated, we would go back to K. Puttaswamy judgment, in which I think 9 or 10 principles of privacy came in place. When we talk about these principles, especially for the app, there should be few basic things as to consent, as to limitation of the purpose, limitation purpose. Then we talk about collection purpose. Then there has to be a sunset clause, that for what purpose and for how much time you're going to keep it. Is it required for that thing? So this entire criteria, they do mention about these criteria, but how to implement them, and for the user especially, how user should be able to see that whether I have this choice, or whether even if I consent for my let's say I think you're aware about the Californian data privacy law which recently came in place. So even if I give the consent, the basic thing which I hear from everybody is they take a blanket consent initially from you and you say I agree, and being lawyer we do not understand it goes in pages and pages and pages, so nobody has that much of time to understand. So we do agree with it, but then we don't understand the part of even if I give the consent, then do I have an access to correct it? Do I have, that right to be forgotten, which came in place? Do I have an access to see that what exactly my data you have it, and whether I can correct it, whether I can withdraw that, change it? So all that thing still not imbibed, whereas our mobile apps or, technology inbuilt, it's yet not there. So there's no consonance between what exactly what ought to be, or what law speaks, or general principle speaks of privacy vis-a-vis your mobile apps.
So is the space ripe for the state to step in? Because internet as it evolved in 90s, when it became very ubiquitous, the primary idea was to keep it free, and free both in terms of pricing, and both in terms of controls and curbs, and who basically is able to implement any kind of limitations on the internet. But if you look at the Communications Decency Act, Section 230 C1 of the USA, it leaves all these companies free from all kinds of liability, even civil and criminal, all kinds of liability. They go scot-free. So vis-a-vis the individual who actually signs something like a standard form contract, technically look at it. If it runs in 200 pages, how am I supposed to sign that thing within 5 seconds and accept all conditions and only then use that app? So it's actually all my rights are being taken away. Then if you look at the granularity of the permissions, that if they're collecting data, so if there's an app which let's say does payments, why is it looking at my phone calls? So if it is looking at my phone calls, what is it doing with my phone calls and my contacts? Now, so the 9 principles which were discussed in Puttaswamy from the Justice Shah Committee, they talk about privacy principles. How do we actually implement them? So I think as we go on, there's going to be a large app ecosystem which will be developed in India, and there are many sort of here participants who would be entrepreneurs, who would be startups. How do they build in, these design principles from privacy and legality point of view, so that when they make these apps, when India makes these apps, we are conscious of privacy and we are conscious of security of the individual, and that the liability is not lopsided. How do we do this?
See, I think I completely agree. I think that that's more of a technical part, but at the same time, I would say that ambiguity, whereas law is concerned, ambiguity, whereas implementation of law is concerned, is creating this. And as it's a nascent, it's not that as old as other laws. So in that scenario, and even our IT side is building up. When I talk about AI, when I talk about apps, every day there's some other new innovation or technology development is there. Now combining that with technology, with legal aspect as to incorporating all these principles. So principle do stand, but I have one question today also, that whereas my IT Act is there, IT Act 43A, and even if I pick up 72, it specifically deals with that when there is a profit or a loss due to the breach is where I can that party is liable for punishment. Yes, consequences. So I have to wait actually that with my data, there has to be some breach. And even if there is a breach, there is nothing wrong in that. But then with that breach, if there is a loss or a profit that has occurred, so why do I wait for that when I say about that I do have a right to privacy? So there has to be, I think, a synchronization, whereas all our laws are concerned. And at the same time, even if I have law, let's say, even if I pick up reasonable security practices rule 2009, which does talk about your what exactly safety measures the URLs or the apps have to take in place, and in case of sensitive data,
and
they
sensitive
do define
personal data also.
Yes, sensitive personal data also, and if there is a breach, and what ISO 27001 standard one has to comply with. But at the same time, you do not there is a slight ambiguity as to what reasonable measure do you talk about. It just talks about that you have to take care of reasonable measure, but me as to and it doesn't even have a compartment as to hospitals. It doesn't have as to IT also very specific, that what measure I have to take. You can't keep everybody at the same platform. So me in the business would not exactly, even if I want to comply with, I'm not aware that exactly what practices I have to follow, that I am in compliance with the reasonable security measures I have taken care of.
So in other countries, there's not a single cybercrime act, but there are multiple cybercrime acts. Like in the US, HIPAA is there, which talks about health data security. There is a data privacy law for schools and children. And if you look at the latest June law, I think it promulgated in January, the Consumer Protection Act of California, Consumer Privacy Act. Similarly, we are coming up with the Disha Act in India, and we have also been debating about the Personal Data Protection Regulation, which was put forward by Honorable Justice Sri Krishna. I think that there is a lot of legislative movement. RBI has done a lot on shifting the liability from the individual, or the loss from the individual, limiting the loss of the individual in case of financial apps and banks and online banking. But are these sufficient? Do you think that the RBI circulars, which limit the liability of the individual to a particular amount or to a particular time frame, are they sufficient, or are they workable, or is it giving justice to people?
Are you talking about the banking side of it? Yes. The banking circulars? See, yes. Again, there's a slide. I have a view on that. Might not go on it. So if we just talk about the circular, it's absolutely fine, because it does put a liability over the bank or over the institute, financial institute, whoever it is, that in case there is a breach, or there's a third party breach, or there's a breach in their technical part, consumer should not be at the stake. You have to protect the rights of the consumer, and the entire amount has to be reimbursed. That's what RBI circular talks about. And in case of, let's say there's a breach between my side as to sharing OTP myself, in that scenario, yes, there are certain conditions as to reporting within 3 days, and how it has to go, and how much amount one can be compensated back. But at the same time, I would say that one has to go to the aspect of that, how my data is available. You get a phone call as to your Paytm, I'm calling from your Paytm KYC is pending and I'm calling for this, and you have to do and I'll get it done. So you feel that absolutely fine, I'll do it. And they do pretend like, they are Paytm. So when they pretend themselves to be Paytm and they're aware about that this is my Paytm number and my KYC is actually pending. So when I get that call, I'm actually believing in the part that yes, it's Paytm. Now the question arises as to who has given my detail to them. And it's not just mine. There are like thousands and thousands of phone calls that keep coming from banks, from Paytms, impersonating themselves as. So I said there's a breach at there, and they do not open their side as to that whether the breach has happened at their end or not. So there's a slight ambiguity on that, but when I talk about RBI circular, I'm absolutely fine. It's one of the welcoming move that consumers should not be paid for any kind of glitch or a breach, which comes at the a security aspect at the bank stage, or technical glitch at the bank stage. I do understand that banks also undergo there is a lot of loss to bank when we talk about yearly loss also due to that, but I think there has to be a technological upliftment on that part. And that may be because of we don't have those guidelines as to what measures one has to keep on playing. Sorry, go on.
No. So RBI in fact had given a very detailed cyber security practice guideline for the banking institutions, and it is good. It is really good. Apart from that, there are internal government documents which have given practices and procedures about, and standard operating procedures about security of government critical infrastructure, which are being followed. I think you were discussing a species of contributory negligence. Like generally when you legally go to court, people talk about, okay, you shared your OTP. And that being the legal position, it becomes difficult for the consumer to defend his stance. And generally then it is not in the favor of the consumer if there has been some breach in which there has been willy-nilly some kind of a contribution of negligence by sharing OTP or some other information. But see, what brings to our attention here is that like reasonable cybersecurity practices are to be maintained by institutions, I think individuals and small businesses, and then their consumers, they need to maintain basic cyber hygiene. And the basic cyber hygiene starts with your password. Now, we are in a world where today the most popular password is PASSWORD. Still, year after year, through data breaches, the most popular password is still password, followed by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right. So if you look at the top 10 passwords in breaches by frequency, you see that people are making it easier for the cyber criminal. So by cyber hygiene, I think we should make it difficult for the cyber criminal. First of all, by using a different password for every service, by using longer and more complex passphrases, by enabling two-factor. So today, I think I'll urge upon everybody, please enable two-factor authentication on your devices today. Just after this talk, please go for your all emails, for your Twitter account, for your Facebook, just do this one small thing, enable two-factor. By doing this, you are making life immensely difficult for the cyber criminal. Otherwise, all your credentials, which are leaked in some 2009 breach, you may be reusing those usernames and passwords. You can go and check on this site called Have I Been PWNED? Have I Been Pwned? PWNED. You can go and check and put your username, and you will find that your username has been breached at least at 4 places. Now, so as Khushbu was saying, that how did it go there? Like if your credentials have been leaked, there is some breach of cybersecurity practice. But see, there are various ways in which people collect this information. They scrape it from social sites. They run slow scrapers over years, which collect credentials and things like that. They may have brute forcing attacks through which they may generate this. So it's very difficult to pinpoint without a forensic investigation as to what was the location of the breach. But to prevent ourselves from being victims of cybercrime, we need to follow basic cybersecurity practices, basic hygiene, use two-factor, upgrade. Whenever there's a patch available for your operating system, for your phone, for your software, please upgrade it. Install the latest version. Wherever possible, don't use public Wi-Fi for sensitive transactions, because it's very easy to, these devices communicating one-to-one. No, it's spraying data all around the room, everywhere. So anybody sitting with a listening device can simply take data from your device. Many of the services are not using encryption by default. So unencrypted data is free for anybody to take and make use of. Now, as soon as you get a breach notification from anywhere, if you check, have I been pawned, or in any case you learn about, let's say, a breach of Yahoo, old breach of Yahoo, please go and change your passphrases and passwords. Use, latest patches and upgrades. Wherever possible, even on your mobile devices, try to use some antiviruses. These are not difficult things. And if you don't know these things, ask somebody. Somebody would be able to teach you. It's a 5-minute job. Somebody would give you basic steps, harden your devices, your social profiles, harden your social profiles. Don't overshare. Don't allow anybody to download any of your photos and profiles. You can go into your privacy settings, into your account, and make and restrict the number of people, to friends or friends of friends or whosoever you want to. You have to restrict this, because all your password questions can be guessed from your Facebook. It may be your pet's name or your mother's maiden name or your school's name. All of this information is available, and you're protected only by your password. For industries and for corporates, I think they should go for aggressive backups, because ransomware is becoming a very, very big threat. They should have aggressive backups and an offline backup also. Similarly, they should use firewalls. They should use basic cyber hygiene. They should find which important accounts are there and protect these crown jewels, because today people are not spraying around attacks. They are looking for targeted attacks. So if you look at cybercrime, it has evolved into a very highly evolved, complex, modular world where entry barriers are very few. It doesn't require much to be a criminal. In the real world, if you want to purchase a gun, there are regulatory issues and safety issues. And if you want to sell drugs, there are a lot of problems. In cybercrime, if you want to become a cyber criminal, you can sit at home and there are YouTube videos which will explain you how to become a cyber criminal. So this anonymity gives a sense of power to people, and they feel that they'll be able to do everything. But it's not so. They're leading breadcrumbs everywhere, and when investigation is done, it can be found out. Whatever precautions people are using, you are going to leave some evidences everywhere, and people are going to get you if you are doing crime. Now, what's your advice, Khushbu, legally and otherwise, to people not to, first of all, participate in cybercrime, willingly or unwillingly, not to be part of contributory negligence, and to have reasonable cybersecurity practices on the part of consumer? What do you feel about this?
So I completely agree with it that even as I was saying that difficulty is law part, B comes is investigation part, and C comes is actually convicting somebody who has committed the crime or getting whatever money you got it. When we talk about cyber crime, it's not just financial, but it has other impacts also. So when the crime is done, even if you try to get justice, it's not done. So yes, the part that the first aspect comes as to safeguard yourself as much possible. Do not rely upon, you do rely upon the law part, but then, I think safety is a precautionary measure is better than, the cure part of it. Do agree with it, because it's too nascent, it's going too fast for you to commit crime. I'll not give an example as to, when we know also that who has committed or which location it is, it's difficult to arrest those people. So yes, safeguard yourself. There's a basic cyber hygiene one has to follow. I think you were absolutely, you've covered almost all the aspects as to passphrases and what one has to take care of with regard to cyber hygiene and safety. Take care of that. Apart from individual, I would go on corporates. Yes, corporate has to. And if we have the pending data protection bill, if that comes in place, then there is a huge penalty up to 2 to 4% of your global turnover. So if that comes in place, yes, whether loss or not, if there is a breach at your end and it's because of your failure for complying with reasonable practices, then there's a breach at your end. And I would give example that has been happening all over. Be it India, be it GDPR, be it US, be it UK laws, all of them have heavy penalties, with examples coming as to Equinox, with example coming as to Uber. They've got billions of, millions of dollars of penalty just in case of a breach at their end. Apart from breach and apart from the penalty which can be imposed, at the same time your business goes standstill. With ransomware, they do have your entire data is encrypted, so it becomes a difficulty for you to run your business smoothly. I think one of the forex company was recently there was an attack over there, and they could not run the business. They had to go on pen and paper for good 1 week. Apart from that, even now that people are smart, that they have extra copies, they have come to a smart level with, I think, the recent law firm attack, that they pick up one of the creamy data of your clients.
The data also.
Yes, and they say that I'm gonna we're gonna make your data public.
They're blackmailing you.
Yes, blackmail you in that manner. So they are also, I would say that these cyber criminals are a little more smarter than how you are, and they know how to work things around. But at the same time, it's better that we take care of these aspects and not take these things lightly, because almost all the tech companies, we do not take these basic measures as an important part as, you know, the business. So apart from taking care of business, take care of this side also. I think when we were talking about what apps should keep in place, yes, to take care of openness, connectivity as to what are you collecting for your business, restrictions, basic safety measures, two-factor authentication has to be there in their system also. You know, disclosure, openness about it. What are you collecting for what purpose? Whom are you sharing with? Have all those things at play so that in case the breach also happens at the later stage, you have your books clear out there to show it, you know, that, okay, I have taken care of these part. Now, yeah.
And how about reporting? Let's say that I have kept reasonable cybersecurity practices, and as an individual, I've patched, upgraded, done everything properly, and there's a breach. So what do I do?
Forensics also done.
Yeah. and you may talk about how to, you know, preserve evidence if you want to report something also. So about reporting as to how does one report, where does one report, what are the expectations if I report. In fact, as a law enforcement officer, I should be telling you to go to the nearest police station, but probably from the legal angle, you would be able to talk about various other things like adjudication to many other things, you know, which are broader in scope. Investigation comes at the last, it's a post facto, it's a postmortem thing. But there's this huge gamut of things you can explain as to what the individual should do and what are the rights of the individual in case of breach, and how does it go?
I think you would have been the better person to answer that, but I'll try to do the justice to this. See, when I talk about corporate side of it, let's just demarcate corporate and individual. So corporate side of it, the moment you feel that there is any breach, yes, look at the key places as to where it has it. You know, which system or which key personal management have your SOP ready for that. At the same time, get your forensics done, preserve all your evidences, because whether you wanna take this to a court level, but apart from breach that has happened, whether you want to pursue this against the person who has committed such crime against you, you need to have your forensics done. So before going to the police station, I would say that get your forensics done. At the same time, take a call. You do have to report. If I talk about data protection bill, if it comes in play, it's compulsory, mandatory for you to report it to data protection authority. And in case of absence of doing that, also you're party to the crime. So in case you are aware about that the breach has happened and you have just kept mum and not, you know, you've kept silent, that itself is you're party to the crime now. So yes, if that comes in play, it's mandatory. But apart from that, yes, after that, report it to the nearest police station. Keep your entire documentation ready. If possible, get forensics done from somebody outsider, because there can be a high possibility if it's a corporate breach that there is somebody internally involved into it. I'm not saying yes, but then there can be a possibility. So it's always good to have some external person being involved, and also understand that which area or where is the problem has happened, because if you don't patch that, you are actually opening it to the public that there is a glitch like that, for actually you become more vulnerable. Apart from that, yes, evidence is one major part. That even when cyber world, I talk about e-evidence, and admissibility of the evidence is major issue. Even if you report the crime, the later part of investigation, post-investigation, admissibility in the court becomes difficulty. So preserve all your documents in a manner it can be, as to preserve the system. Get somebody, in the business, in the same business, to do all that forensics for you and preserve the evidences for you. Apart from that, being a first hand, preserve the system, preserve as much screenshots and URLs you can take, and IP addresses if possible for you. At the same time, yes, keep all of it. Report. There are two sides of reporting. One is reporting of breach, and the other is going against and pursuing that matter. That is personal to you, whether you want to pursue or not pursue, depending on how much the damage is. Now I'm coming on the personal side of it. If there's something like that, a banking fraud or any other cyber crime, go on cybercrime.gov.in. Apart from that, that can be anonymous. Apart from that, you can go nearest police station. You can drop in an email in the nearest police station if we look at today's condition as to lockdown which you are facing. Preserve as much document as you can, because when you talk about RBI circular, burden of proof is not on me, but it is on the bank.
Ombudsman.
But then at the same time, it helps you out to solve your case very fast. The time frame is also very nice. It's 3 months that bank has to reply to you. In case they fail that, you can approach RBI ombudsman, banking ombudsman. You can go on their website. There's a dedicated page on that, and there are almost 22 specific state-wise portals, and then you can click on which portal you are come in place. Portal would be wherever your branch is, that jurisdiction comes in place. Let's say I'm in Bombay, so Maharashtra or Bombay area is what comes in place. My branch is not where I am. So that takes care. Now the banking ombudsman takes care at that time. But any other cyber crime, go to nearest police station, take screenshots, URL, as much possible. Try to preserve the system where it has happened. Yeah, that's about it.
We have 2-3 minutes. If there are any questions which the organizers want to put, we can close it in time by answering those questions.
Or else we can actually have a 5 pointer for corporate or individuals to what safety measures one has to take from you.
Please go ahead.
From you.
No, please go ahead.
No, it's absolutely okay. Questions.
The corporates, first of all, they should understand that due to lockdown, corporates due to lockdown are working in an environment which is not controlled. So in an institutional setup, you have a hardened device with endpoint protection, with a firewall, with an intrusion protection system, intrusion detection system, various kind of anomaly detection systems, which run real time. But here you are using the same computer for work and same computer for your leisure. So the threat surface area has increased a lot. And while you're working from home due to lockdowns or due to a pandemic, you may become a victim of cybercrime, wherein somebody may pivot from your computer and gain access to critical infrastructure in your company, and you have to prevent that. You have to be very careful, starting with basic segregation of home computer and work computer. If you don't have 2 devices, at least have 2 different accounts on the same device where you're not mixing these 2 things. Similarly, at home also for work, try and use your company VPN, because any important company would be providing a VPN for its use. So a VPN would be giving you a fair modicum of security. Even your local data you should back up, because your office documents and other things are important. Don't open any links, which you don't trust. So, and don't visit any websites which you're normally not visiting. So these simple things, plus enabling even in your office emails and office accounts, enable 2-factor authentication. Look for any anomalous activity, patch and upgrade your system. So these are basic things which apply for individuals as well as corporates. Yeah, Kushma.
No, thank you so much. I think any questions from the organizer side?
Yes, thank you so much, Khushbu and Brijesh. There are a lot of questions, but I guess we are out of time. So would you like to answer two of the questions?
We can answer 1 or 2. I mean, looking at
you can take quick one question, Yashashree. You can take one question. Yeah.
Just check. One attendee, he has asked that is saving passwords on Google Chrome safe? We usually do save passwords, right? So is it safe or is it not safe?
Brijesh?
Yes, yeah.
I think Brijesh should be the better one to talk on that. Being technical
for Google Chrome, yeah.
Brijesh, just to update you, your microphone is muted, I believe. If you have to unmute it, yes.
Yeah, my connection was bad. I had logged off and come back, so I couldn't hear the question. Tell me.
Yes, so the question is saving passwords on Google Chrome safe?
I have answered that. So, saving your password except in a password manager is not a very good idea, because if tomorrow somebody breaches your computer, it's very easy to get passwords from your Google Chrome cache. It's very easy. I don't think it uses some great encryption or there to store your passwords. And anybody installing a Trojan on your computer or a browser plugin or keylogger can easily get access to passwords stored on your device if they are not in an encrypted password manager. So not a good idea. I've answered that on the chat also.
Thank you so much, Brijesh and Khushbu. It was really nice hearing from you. Yeah. Thanks
Thank
a
you
lot.
Thank you
much.
guys. Have a good day. Bye bye.